My name's Ryan, and I'm recording a video because it's the sense in my personality. I believe that the American FBI should do an investigation, and they should take audio censoring equipment into the prison cells of and interview all of the inmates on death row. We have prisons in America, and there's men on death row, and I believe that the FBI should do an investigation for further technological advancements and movements of their FBI progressive chart of coordination with law enforcement in action. What I believe is that everyone that's living, their voice is relative to their soul, and I believe that our voice records and archives how we've lived as people, and it's our voice as people tells who we really are. It's not how we look. Our voice is the soul of our person, and it archives who we are as people. Our voice does. And my idea was that the FBI should go into the prison cells on death row and audio record the voices of the inmates living on death row in the penitentiaries and get 10-minute articles on recorded audio of their voice and their speaking, 10 minutes of recording of their speaking, and then taking the voice, diagnosing it, taking the 10-minute articles and diagnosing it through computer technology for bass notes, tempo, how the voice sounds, all of it, to get an idea of how the voice sounds of someone that's living on death row. Their bass notes, the highs, the lows, the tempo of their voice, and put the 10 minutes of conversation that they recorded through computer diagnostics analysis equipment and diagnose it in the computer for levels that register on frequencies for how their voice sounds. And then I thought, after they do that, after the FBI records the voices and diagnoses the audio and the voice from all of the prison inmates on death row and all of the penitentiaries of America, taking the computer program that diagnosed the voice notes and charts and taking all of that information that they diagnosed in the recordings and with the computer and analyzed for bass notes, tempo, highs, lows, mids, all of that, and create a computer program and software that recognizes the voice of what a murderer sounds like. My idea even ranged to 3 or 4 categories. Well, there's men on death row that only killed a couple people, but there's men on death row that killed like 10 people. You know, there's people with worse crimes on death row than others. And their voice implicates them because their voice archived where they had lived as people. And so some say, okay, what does this do for me? How is this good for me? How is this voice microchip diagram program good for me? This diagram program produced in microchips that read the vocal levels and charts of a murderer. How's this good for me? Well, after your computer analyzes the audio from all of the discussions on death row and the penitentiaries with all the inmates there, it will find a clerical variable for what a voice of a murderer sounds like in a living human, a man or woman. It will record and tell you what the voice of a murderer sounds like in a living man or woman. And some say, oh, yep, just by the way the voice sounds. Those people murdered that are on death row. And just by the way the voice sounds, you can tell the voice of a murderer. And beyond that, if you put it through a microchip, a computer audio program, you can create a microchip database of memory for the voice patterns of a serial killer. And then after you create that pattern, you can put it into a machine and record that as a recorded vocal normal for what a person sounds like when they've killed someone. And you can take that and record it into your microchip. And then you can take that microchip that notices voice recognition and bass levels and tones of what a murderer sounds like. And you can run it through if cell phone calls are recorded, phone calls, all of that. You can run that microchip database through all of the cellular networks and phone calls in America. And you can find the pattern voice of a serial killer. You can find the pattern voice of a serial killer just by that microchip and audio. Yes, you can find them. Yes, you can diagnose someone's voice and label them. Oh, well, okay, we diagnosed 10,000 men and women on death row in America, and we said their voice all had the same recognition labels, labeled as certain types and ideas. Oh, they all had murdered, and you can run the microchip in a database and spread it as with the transmitter that diagnoses cell phone calls and catch and web in calls. It would catch calls from cellular units from phones or line units from phones, and you can get the picture for what a murderer sounds like, and you can put it over. You can diagnose phone calls and hear the voice of a murderer and phone calls with this microchip database that you built from your analysis of people on death row in American prisons. You can understand the voice of a killer, and it's through audio sensory technology. And you can find similar patterns after you form the microchip and program and displace it from the microchip and program that you created from the recognized voice patterns of what a serial killer sounds like, and displace it through cell phone calls and wired phone calls throughout America and find the names attached to the phones and say, well, they had the voice of a murderer, and you could look into them and see if they have murdered before. You could do investigations on people in America just by the way their voice sounds over phone calls with that technology. But anyways, thanks for listening. There's an idea from Ryan Michael Bone. Alright, bye.